Going back to my initial question, was there something similar to what the popular conception of democracy is? Was it there in ancient India? And what about the time periods? Because as National Geographic said, 5th century Athens was the first time such ideas emerged. So I would love to hear what you have to say about both of these points.
I think both of us are pretty interested in Greek civilization, so I think we got quite carried away. But to come
Yeah.
back to India, which is our topic for today in comparison with Greece. So in India, in Bharat, as usual, to look for the sources of something, we have to go back to the Vedic corpus. Those are the first expressions of civilizational values. So, of course, in the Rig Ved, in the Tharved, in the Yajurved, you have mentions of something which I will explain why I do not call democracy, but something which I will call Ganasang. Now, this Ganasang is a word, a Sanskrit word, an indigenous word, which is used very specifically again to refer to a system of governance and administration and politics in which people take a part. So, like we have been emphasizing, like I said in the beginning, let's not transpose our current values to thousands of years ago. I am thinking of proto-democracy in ancient India as being a system of government in which people play a part, elections play a part, and welfare of people plays a part. So, all these things are in a Gansang. The idea of Ganasang, the idea of election, etc., is found in the Shruti, which I told you about. Shruti, remember, is the Vedic corpus, that which you hear.
Yeah.
Smriti is that which you remember. Smriti is changeable, it depends upon Desh and Kal. So, Smriti, in a sense, will be different in the 5th century and different today. The sciences, etc., will come under Smriti, which are, as you learn more, things change. Shruti does not change. So, in the Vedic corpus in Shruti, you find mentions of elections, you find mentions of kings being elected. I will go into the actual mechanics of it in some detail later. Then you also find in the Pali canon. So, the Pali canon is everything that was written about what Gautam Buddha had to say. So, Gautam Buddha.
Just to base us in time, right? So, what are the time periods that we're talking about for all of that you're mentioning?
So, remember the
Roughly.
Rig Ved and the Vedic corpus, the timeline for that is extremely difficult to actually fix up. We
Yes.
spoke about this in our last podcast when we spoke about the so-called Aryan invasion theory and the way the Rig Ved has been dated to all
Yeah,
kinds of times.
yeah.
So, 1500 BCE, which is actually rubbish. That's why I like to just say thousands of years ago for Shruti. Some of the Upanishads, however, may have been written later, say about 1000-2000 years ago. As far as the Smritis are concerned, I would say I'm going to talk a lot about Panini's Ashtadhyay. So that would be about 2300 years ago, roughly. And if
So
I
that's
talk
around the
about
same time as Athens, 5th century BC, or
yes,
little
yes. So let me specify something. The Vedic corpus, where I have talked about mentions about kings being elected, etc., are far before the 5th century.
Exactly.
Far.
That's what I was getting at.
Yes. The next thing is that if we go to exact specifics where the Gansang has been defined, the Gansang has been explained, the Gansang has been seen in action. This is called the Mahajanpad period of ancient India. So, Mahajanpad means big collection of people. So, around say the 8th century BCE, which is again before the Greeks that we were talking about, all of Bharat was divided into 18 Mahajanpads. So, city states roughly, just for understanding, it's not as if they are the same.
Yeah.
Just for understanding,
Yeah.
think of them as city states. And of these 18, the important ones were Magad, Vaishali, Kasi, Kosal, etc. Now, the story.
Just before you get into the details of Mahajansang, so I'm just recounting what you said. The Vedic corpus, where the principles that are similar to what we think of the principles of democracy, which is of election of officials or rulers from the populace, those principles are outlined
in
in
the
something
Rig Ved.
that is, we know it's a controversial topic on dating it, but it's definitely perhaps even thousands of years before the
Yes.
Greeks.
Yes.
Specific articulations of the system, the Mahajansang, is around 300 years before Athens. Am I getting you correctly?
300 years before Athens. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
You're correct.
Okay, cool. I just wanted to put it in.
Yes.
Yeah, we go ahead and explain, please.
These Mahajanpads were of two kinds. One was this.
Mahajanpad, sorry, not Jansang, my apologies.
Yeah, Mahajanpad. So these Mahajanpads were of two kinds. One were ruled by kings, the classic monarchies. We have no problem understanding that. That's a fairly understandable system. The others were the ones which are a bit of a surprise. These were the Ganasang. And where did we find them? We found them, one important one was north of the Ganga, going up to the Nepal Tarai. These were the Vajjis and the Lichavis. Another very important group of Gansangs or Gansang is the Sakyas. They are important because Gautam Buddha was a Sakya. He is called Sakya Muni. Then there is another important one, the Mauryas of Pippalvahan. The Mauryas of Pippalvahan, according to one story, not the story, is the one from where Chandragupta Maurya emerged. So we can see that from these Gansangs, some very, very important role models and stars of ancient India have appeared. And many of these are mentioned in the Vedic corpus, in many of the Smritis, in the Purans, and two specific books which or compositions which I will mention is the Arthashastra and Panini's Rashtadhyay. So we have these sources from India, I mean Indian sources, and I told you that there were these Mahajanpads. Some of them were Ganasang, others were monarchies. So there was Ganatantra, which means rule of the people, and there was Rajtantra, which was rule by the king. So it was, very obvious that these two clashed, Rajtantra and Ganatantra. These were two separate systems. And these ideas were also different, although we will also see how these ideas in a way integrated themselves later. It was, should I tell you? No, I'll tell you that story later. First, let me tell you about the kinds of Ganatantras which were there and how do we know. So we know this because of Panini's Rashtadhyay. Rashtadhyay is a book of grammar. So we should not ideally know anything else except grammar from that book, but Panini has given such wonderful, all-embracing examples from all parts of society, culture and polity that you get to know a lot about all these things. So he tells us how these Ganatantras were managed. So there was a Gan, that means the collection of people. This collection of people consisted of everyone. So that whole thing, whenever you study or think of anything Indian, what comes up? Caste. What comes up? Varna and Jati, as we have already discussed. So people from all Varna and Jatis belonged to this Gan. And they could be Brahmins or Kshatriyas or potters or weavers or everything, anything. They all had an equal say. Now,
when
how
you say everyone, does that include women?
Women is a very interesting question because in the Rig Ved is mentioned the Vidhata. The Vidhata is a collection of people or a place where people from the entire Gan spoke and decided what was to be done in that community, in that clan. And it is very clear, not just from the Rig Ved but from the other Vedic, other mentions in the Vedic corpus, that women were welcome in the Vidhata and they used to speak their mind in it. However, in another place, there are actual descriptions of voting. Where there are actual descriptions of voting, over there for me the jury is out. And I think more research is necessary to know whether women voted, that they spoke, that they were there, they had a presence, unequivocally, yes. Did they vote? I am not sure.
Okay, we don't know yet.
We don't know.
Okay.
Yeah. Maybe, as I said, I mean, people who are not blinkered by many things have to read a lot of these compositions again to arrive at some conclusion. So anyway, to get back to the way in which these Ganas operated. So there were 2-3 ways in which they operated. One was that they all got together and elected a king. They elected a king who they thought would be good for their security, administration, to take care of everything. The king had to be an exceptional person who could Not only he had to be strong, he had to be noble, he had to be kind of thinking about the welfare of others. Then only would everyone vote for him. A little bit of a digression. If people are interested in watching something about and learning about Indian governance in the past, there is an excellent series on Doordarshan India which is called Surajya. So Surajya, yeah, Surajya. It will take you from governance in the Vedic period to, I think it comes up to the modern period. I have seen just about 5 to 7 episodes, so I do not know up till where it comes. But what I have seen is an excellent exposition, very researched one, of ancient Indian governance.
Watch the full episode on the VARC Indian History YouTube channel and podcast.